20th century. Yes, when we see the influence of Marxism in our literature, then we find that it usually started from this Marxist influence. It started from 20th century. Okay, so in our study of literature also we find the traces of Marxist theories, and a lot of critics also they got influenced to study to find Marxist perspectives in literature from 20th century. All right. This particular theory that we found in literature from 20th century, and we saw how critics are also getting influenced to make a criticism related to Marxist theories. Actually this kind of criticism has helped us in the development of a full-fledged literary theory. Okay, so Marxism is a very full-fledged, it's a very mature kind of literary theory today, because the writers, the authors, the creative mind, they initiated this theory. They put the idea in their writings in the different genres, mainly in the novel, you should remember, mainly in the novel. And the critics also, they were very appropriate in pointing out these perspectives in different genres. They critics, they pointed out, they gave a lot of discussion and debates regarding Marxist theories found in literature. And due to the contribution of both the authors as well as the critics, now today we find that Marxism in literature today is quite a mature piece of theory. Okay, then uh, in 1930s particularly, there was a sweep of very radical critical trend in England. Okay, so this critical trend became very active in England. Okay, and this kind of critical approach to literature and highly critical approach to literature, it also left behind its mark. Okay, mark on criticism. Okay, and critics such as Lewis and other other critics like F.R. Lewis, and his followers, they actually hold a lot of proof to the wider appeal, and they talked about the authenticity of the theory. Okay, and they pointed out that F.R. Lewis and his predecessor, his followers, his disciples, they pointed out, uh, you know, they were the ones who made this theory, who made a criticism related to Marxist theories that they found in literature, in creative pieces, in different genres of literature, particularly in novel. And they were the ones who showed that Marxist criticism has a lot of concern towards materialism. So they were the ones, those critics of that time, particularly 1930s, they pointed out that Marxist theory has got a lot of concern towards materialism. Okay, and those were the people only who helped Marxism or Marxist theories find a deep rooted connection in literature. Okay, now why this kind of thing happened during that period? Because there was a growing influence of Marxism on literary criticism during those great 19th century fiction writings also. Okay, and they have actually pulled out one appreciation, and they brought about their writings in a concrete text by the critics. Okay, and these critics actually elevated the status of those pieces of literature which had high literary perspectives. Okay. I'm sorry again. I'm getting distracted because of this. Online on and off. Anyway, so moving on. I think you understood what I'm trying to say. 1930s and early 20th century. In those days, two things happened. First of all, great masterpiece literature and masterpiece novel, particularly, they were being written by certain great authors. Okay, critics, when they read these novels, they found a lot of Marxist influence in those novels. So they made a very in-depth criticism about these novels, wherein they pointed out Marxist perspectives. And due to their contribution as critics, Marxism, this theory, got a lot of important place in literature. Okay, in our English literature particularly. Okay, so you have to you have to take the note, you have to take this point, very important, that Marxist viewpoint was at that time at the center of the discourse. Okay, until today also, when we talk about those discourses related to Marxism, or as we were discussing last class, which is very much related to materialism, feudalism, class hierarchy, then till today you will accept the fact that was a factual representation given in fictional form, which was aptly pointed out, discussed, debated by the Marxist literary critics. Okay, so Marxist, starting from those days, it has forced the contemporary thinkers, it has forced the critics to reconsider that narrow individual centered stand of helplessness. Okay, of a moralist which was decaying day by day in the modern world. All right. So, Marxism, I'm repeating this for you, it is compelling the thinkers, it is compelling the critics to reconsider that individualistic, self centered helplessness. Okay, individuality. Oh, I, me, myself. But I find myself a helpless creature. Okay, where the morality of mine, including others, is deteriorating in this modern day society. So Marxism gave a help. It helped to rethink about these subtle factors. Okay. So when this gradually, slowly, post-structuralism came, structuralism came. Okay, so those theories, they were, very much deterministic. That they should ignore the basic principle of human initiative. If you see Marxism is challenging the restraining social environment through empowerment of the working class. Okay. At one side, you see, for some time, those human initiative was lagging, but slowly, Marxism brought a new sweep in the society where it talked about empowerment of each and every working class person. Just hold on a second. Okay, so this Marxism, it brought about the thought. Okay, not only to think from the moralistic point of view, where morality was gradually decaying in the modern day. Okay, but it also, Marxism also gave a lot of stress on the empowerment of working class masses. That's what we were discussing last class. Okay. But if you see this theory of deconstruction, the deconstruction actually attacked Marxism. Obviously, if there is a stand, so there'll be a lot of attacks and contradictions will come. So similar way, this theory that came up, the theory of deconstruction, that was an attack on Marxism. Okay, and it gave an attack from different direction. This theory of deconstruction, it attacked the idea of existence of the author or the narrator. Okay, see how he attacked it. Attacked from a very intelligent point of view. Theory of deconstruction said that there's nothing called narrator. There's nothing called author. You should just see the text, and you should completely detach the the genre, any genre of literature, particularly novel, from the author or the or the writer or the creator. Okay, it said that the text is an autonomous work. So just look at the text. There is no need to look at the author. There is no need to look at the background. You just try to study on your own with your notions. Okay, so this was an attack because the author was very much concerned about the society, and then that he was reflecting whatever is happening in the society. So when people read from Marxist point of view, they saw that yes, it is a proper representation, and what author is bringing is authentic from the society. Whereas deconstruction said no, you should not look at author, you should not see what author is bringing. Read the text, like an autonomous work. There is no concern of author connected with the text. So that was what happened with the deconstruction theory. Okay, and it rejected this deconstruction theory, rejected the notion of a center in the text. They said that no, there is no just one perspective in the text. There might be multiple perspectives. So that there is no center in the text, according to them, according to the deconstructionists. And at the same time, this deconstruction theory, they excluded any kind of emphasis on the text, specifically targeted the revolutionary role of literature. They did not believe in the revolutionary role of literature. Okay, then if you look at these theories, then you will find that Marxist criticism has actually year after year, it has evolved actually, and it has come to a more sophisticated argument to address fresh questions. Okay, so there are famous Marxist critics like Raymond Williams. This you must remember, dear learners. You'll be writing this in your answers if you are asked about Marxist critics. They are Marxist critics. Examples of them are Raymond Williams. Okay, Raymond, Raymond Williams, Williams. Then Frederick Jameson, Frederic, Jameson, Jameson, and Terry Eagleton, Terry Eagleton, Eagleton. Terry Eagleton. Okay, so they were the pioneering figures of Marxist criticism, and they helped in building a link between the literary work with their authors. Okay, means they did not abide by the deconstruction theories. They were the one who linked the literary work with the author. Okay, so Marxism has also helped literary criticism in evolving new materialistic concepts of culture, ideology, realism, modernism, political unconsciousness. Okay, and These ideas they very effectively countered the onslaught of these so-called burgeoning theories. So so-called sophisticated theories. They debunked those theories what they were doing. Okay. So from this gradually you will see a deeper study, a deeper criticism of culture, of cultural anthropology, of political point of view came into existence, where we started looking at the text very politically. Okay. We try to explore the cultural backgrounds. All right. So these were the contributions of Marxist critics. So Marxist criticism tells us about the need to combine the effort of the writer and the reader, okay, around the literary work, just the contrary of deconstruction critics, okay, or the deconstruction theories. Marxist criticism, they say that you have to combine the effort of the writer with the reader, okay, and you should be confined with that literary work. These three have great contribution in understanding, okay, the text, the writer, the reader, and the work. Okay, and it says that they say that this kind of Marxist critical approach requires a lot of actively constructed meaning of the work. Okay, you have to construct meaning to suit the positive humanist requirement of our age. Proper active participation should be done so that you take out proper meaning from out of a work so that it would suit positive humanist requirement. All right. So Marxist literary criticism, okay, according to the critics, Marxist literary criticism has got the job of analyzing and interpreting a work, okay, from the humanist perspective, positive humanist perspective. Okay. Now, as I discussed about, our concerns with the culture, with the society should be there in order to make a humanist criticism. Okay, so we will be discussing more about that, how we see society through history, that will be doing from the perspective of Marxism. Actually, if you see history, it is little bit different from society. Society, as we have discussed in our earlier classes, according to Marxism, society depends on the form of production and distribution, isn't it? It comprises of how there is a production and distribution going on. So history is a little bit different if you see from that perspective. History actually gives a longer perspective to human action, okay, and behavior, and it runs to different phases of collective life. History runs through different phases to different categories of collective life. It runs from life to life. Okay. So this man Karl Marx, the founder, the initiator of Marxist study, Karl Marx actually he saw that the most important connection between different societies have been class struggle. Okay, so societies have been formed due to class struggle, and that class struggle alone can explain adequately the nature of significant changes in society. This class struggle will only give you that history of the struggles that were involved in order to change the nature of a particular society. So he says that it is a constant, approach by Marxism that society by itself cannot enlighten us. Marxists actually, they try to say, they suggest that society by itself cannot enlighten us about significant changes. Okay, since it can only refer to the actual present factors. What societies, we can see the present only. Okay, that govern and determine the life of human beings. And this concept of society can merely tell us about the pressures we have to bear in an actual environment that is constituted of human beings bound in specific relations. My society. Okay, I live in a society with all sorts of middle class people, but some of you might be belonging to high class. So your society must be comprising of people of high class. Okay, so we are actually very much we constitute in certain specific relationships. So this idea is very static, and it does not give enough enough scope to study the potentiality of growth and development in life, how we have grown to this much standard. Okay, society doesn't say anything about that, it just shows our present living condition. And we see that, we already noticed that most of the theory, most of the criticism today, it talks about the importance of context. Okay, in which a certain you find a certain certain phenomena are understood. Okay, means, I'm repeating this for you. We notice, with the help of theory and criticism today, that it is only talking about the importance of context. Okay, it is talking about some phenomena in that context which we can understand. But you see, these contexts are just present social trends. Okay, of a particular given time. What about the past? How do we study past? How do we know that what we are today is because of certain things happened in the past? Society only studies about the present, so we have to see the past. Okay, we have to explore the context of the past if we want to study the proper present condition of the society. Okay, so, if we are thinking about the past, then actually we are slowly moving out of society. We are trying to connect our society to the past history. Okay, so such kind of point of view, it opens up the areas of the present setup, social setup, for use by a class of people who would give a different direction to it than the one into which it may have moved on its own. So it will give us some idea of the of the past. If you see a society, if you try to study the history of certain society, then you will be able to know how this class that we are in today. Okay, we are in middle class today, so how and what all happened in our past so that our condition is such. Maybe we would have been in history, in historically my ancestors would have been from high caste class, but slowly maybe have come to middle class. So how this happened, where is the past of the society? Okay, that also needs to be explored if you're studying Marxist theories. Okay. So, that Marxism concerns itself with both history and society. Okay, and that while treating them as separate and specific, you know, Marxism takes both history and society, and it constantly treats them separate, history and society, and then also sometimes it takes history and society as a one entity. Okay, but whatever it does, it relates the two meaningfully. uh, Perspective, it is using very radically. Okay, and this kind of study, that is why you will find it very different from other theories. Okay, it takes a very practical, a very a very progressive, a very helpful theory of the society. Okay, while also at the same time it connects, it tries to find the history of certain society in order to know what comprised of the class that we live in today, a certain society lives in today. Now, when we were discussing in our earlier classes, we have discussed about Marxism, the Marxist theory as an approach. It is actually a point of view that we have discussed. That Marxism is exactly a point of view. It is an approach. Okay. So what does it indicate? This particular statement. What does it indicate? This indicates that a very firm and a very clearly defined standpoint is there on the part of thinking individual. Whoever thinks through Marxist point of view, okay, he or she has got a very firm and clearly defined standpoint. Okay, regarding his or her society. And also, Marxism implies that you cannot at the same time say two different contrary things about your environment. Okay, you cannot talk about two different contrary things about your environment. Okay, so if you see this happening in your everyday life, because of most of us are in the habit of shifting our positions. Okay, we forget that the world we live in is divided into two dangerous sides. Okay, one is the dominant side, another is the dominated side. According to Marxism, okay, I'm talking only according to Marxism. All right. According to Marxist theories, there are two hostile. Both the groups are hostile. Okay, both the groups are hostile means what? They are not friendly. Okay, unfriendly. One is the dominant group, other is the dominated group. Okay, and both of these group they constantly criticize. They constantly attack each other. Okay, nobody sits still. The dominating group, the dominant group, it attacks the dominated group. Dominated group resists, which is why it also attacks back to the dominant group. Okay, and we also try to overlook the fact that one of the ways instrumented by the dominion camp in our world, it is to encourage the section within itself. Okay, dominant world is trying to make a section within itself. It is also trying to divide. One can call it the middle class. Okay, it is an apparently independent and objective position, and the question, of these two camps, the oppressor and the oppressed, these two camps that you are dividing, it is to assert that both can be equally right and wrong in different situations. So we say that you about your society, you can't talk two contrary things, right and wrong at the same time. However, if you talk about the dominant and the dominated uh, aspects of your society, then it is only an option where you can at the same time talk about their rights and wrongs in different situations. Okay, so a large part of this section of the middle class gradually comes to believe that there's a case of self deception, you're cheating yourself. Okay, that an independent and objective position is possible. Okay, so he says that no, if you take from the middle class point of view, and when you are looking at the dominant and the dominated groups, two groups, you can say that no, actually, if you see society, you can at the same time, there can be a positive and a negative approach to your society. Both is there. Something good is also there, something bad is also there. Okay. So, if we try to make a deeper study, deeper understanding of these two aspects of society, the dominant and dominated, then we we are able to think from the individual perspective, from our own perspective. Okay, and this usually interpreting entity in society is to look at the society not merely critically but also in deep moral terms. You just not only see it critically theoretically, but you also take into consideration the moral terms through which you view a society. Okay, if the society is morally good or morally corrupt, okay, or one group is trying to hold its pressure on the other group, so that also comes when you are studying a society. So even if we keep our terms strictly to morality, then we would realize that words such as misappropriation, words such as exploitation, words such as injustice, they also come to existence. How? When you study the society from moralistic point of view, then you will find these expressions cropping up gradually: misappropriation, exploitation, injustice. Okay, so this theory of Marxism, it lays a great stress on the desirability of change in society. You can change. Okay, if you wish, you can bring about a change in a society which is completely full of problems of inequality. There's mass hunger. There is, profit oriented planning. There's unemployment. So, all these aspects can be changed. It is not unchangeable. Okay, if certain part of your society wishes, then it can change is possible. Okay. Uh, so so according to Marx, no society is static. Okay, it is always moving, it is always moving. So if you see many social critics who talk about society, and those who analyze and talk of these problems, okay, then they stay still some power, they give um, some stature they give to Marxist theory. Okay, when social critics, they make a critical approach to the society, they give a lot of emphasis to Marxist theories with regard to these changes that is inevitable in the society. Okay, you can bring about changes if you work for it. Okay, now what does social reality mean then? Okay, how would you define, if you're asked to talk about social reality, how will you define it? Social reality, you can understand that social reality is the social environment of a particular time. Okay, our atmosphere, our surrounding, it constitutes certain economic, political, ideological, cultural aspects. Okay, your surrounding, your environment, if you see, it comprises of economic, political, ideological, cultural aspects are there in your society. So sooner or later you realize that in life, that the world we live, it has its own rules and regulations. Our world has its own rules and regulations. We cannot take a hold on to all the rules and regulations of nature. Okay, so these rules and laws, they regulate our lives as well as they put constraints on us. Okay, it gives freedom also. At the same time, it constraints, it limits our the way we live our life, our lifestyle. Okay, it is very much regulated by certain rules and laws of nature. Okay, so I'm talking about social reality. So this is what is social reality, that the world has got, the nature has got its own rule and regulation. Okay, and we have to keep up our life according to those rules and laws of nature. Okay, And we are often told that conditions of life, they determine our behavior. Whatever are the conditions of our life, our behavior is determined by that. Now see how slowly we are moving from economical perspectives, from historical perspectives, from social perspectives to our psychological level. Okay, our psychology becomes what is according to the conditions of our life. Okay. And it is a very vital social reality. So can you ever say that that you're completely tied down, or you're not at all free, you're completely tied down with your work? Okay, no, in that case what we must see is that there's always fresh decision that we can make every now and then in order to fulfill our desires and aspirations. So you said that, why am I completely tied down with work? Why do I need to work so hard in order to keep myself up in the society? But is it so that you are always out of freedom? No, you are completely free to choose whatever you want. In terms of Marxism, typical Marxism, it is according to your decision, how you choose, what you choose in order to fulfill your desire and aspirations. We have desires, we have aspirations. We want good lifestyle, which is why we work hard in order to earn some money in economical terms and get our wishes fulfilled. So you are not tied on, you're free to have your own choice. Okay. If you want to really become somebody with some name and fame, to work very hard. It's up to you. If you want to live a common life, a simple life, then do not work so hard. So you regulate your work according to your will. Nobody ties you down. Your freedom is never at stake, according to Marxist theories. Okay. So these are certain social realities in our contemporary life. So social reality, actually, it indicates a very clearly defined structure. It points out towards important activities carried out by good number of people. Some very important activities which is carried out by a certain group of homogeneous people might be, okay, in order to bring certain changes in the society. So these activities are closely related to, coming back to our initial classes on Marxism, it is related to two things, which is production and distribution. The activities that this good number of people do together to bring changes in the society, it mainly comprises of production and distribution of things. Okay. So this production and distribution, these two aspects, they are uh, so important. Okay, they are so necessary that in our lives, that we usually take those for granted. Okay, just like we take air and water for granted, our production and distribution is become as important as air and water, and which is why we very often take it for granted. Okay, hai to hai, karna hai to karna hai, like that. Okay, although we know that it is very important, although this production and distribution is the very much core of our life. Okay, but still we take into granted, but we are generally uh, unknown of the fact that while thinking about society, always production and distribution comes to the forefront. Okay, we do not realize that without these activities, the existence and survival of life is impossible. This is the fact. When you are studying from economical point of view, when you're studying particularly from Marxist point of view, okay, these are the two main core aspects of our existence: production and distribution. But the thing is that we forget, okay, how important it is. And how important it is for our survival, how, without it our life can't be possible, we usually forget. All right. So I'll give you one example. There are factories, and for factory workers who can continuously produce goods, this factory and factory workers who produce these goods that we use in our daily life. Okay, and this is nothing but production. Okay, and this production is carried on in accordance with market demands. See, every house, every person needs clothes. Okay, every person needs small things like your slippers, your shoes. Everyone needs. So there is a huge demand of these commonly produced goods. Do we think about that every day? No, we don't think about that. We just take it for granted. Okay, है तो है, फट गया एक चप्पल तो let us buy another one. But we never think about from this we never think from Marxist perspective. Okay, that there is always a demand in certain society, and these factories they work day and night in order to fulfill these demands. So finished goods they reach the retail shop through the wholesale market. Okay, and then these retail shop they bring it to us finally. So in the same way, this so in the same way, these raw materials they are produced through agricultural activity that goes on round the year. Okay, there's a market segment, particularly they work in order to change our infrastructure. Bridges are made, roads are made. So what are all these going on? We get constantly the products like oil, petrol, steel. Okay, so many commodities we are getting each day, and that is what that is actually produced day after day in order to fulfill our demand. So all this is part of a highly organized and complex society. Please remember this kind of production that we barely think of, it is a very important part of our production, and it is a very highly and complex activity, and something we can understand completely and sufficiently only after great deal of mental effort. How this production and distribution is done, how demand is in proportion with production and distribution in every small and big society, and how we are getting this produce in maximum prices, how they move from wholesale market to retail market. So we just take those things for granted because we get things available very easily. Okay, but when you sit to study those aspects, you will need great mental of effort in order to understand the movement of the inflow of different materials. Okay, and this is what comprises our society. So these activities that go on every day to fulfill different demands, they not only it helps our social living better, but also it is, as I was telling you, it is a conscious and moral and ethical uh, method in order to provide things equally to equal individual. This is the right of every individual to enjoy these production and distribution. Okay, so we have never thought this. uh, yeah, maybe if you are economic student you must have studied this, but generally we must have not thought this from conscious perspective. Okay, so maybe we have left it to economists only to do this work. Okay, सिर्फ टैक्स का बढ़ जाता है तो we go on shouting and screaming and that's all. Rest of the work we leave it to the economists to think over and give us good economy. Okay, and when something happens which is adverse towards us, then we go on blaming politics, we go on blaming law, we go on blaming social living. Okay, but we specially never sit down to study all these movements that is happening in our economical area that changes the social standards of our life. Okay, so these are certain social realities that we are pondering over. And these social realities are just not social realities, but they have a lot of influence from the economical realities. Okay, so by now I think it is very clear to you that even looked at from a capable individual's point of view, you maybe you all are very capable people. Okay, and if we see from you kind of people who are very capable economically, maybe most of you are earning and you are setting your own families, then we all people, our world, it does not present one entirely rosy picture, isn't it? Our picture is not rosy because we are constantly worried about the rising. This is happening for not only today, for generations. Okay, my parents are worried. Things rates are going high of different goods. See what politicians are doing, what lawmakers are doing. So these are certain pictures of the society which are not very rosy, which are not very beautiful. Okay, and it is not an easy place to live. We have understood this world, the society is not an easy place to live. Day by day, our demands are rising. Okay, and we are rushing and sweating and panting in order to fulfill those demands, and that's why our social existence become little difficult. All right, like I'll give you one example. Like earlier, lifestyle was not so much paid emphasis upon. Our parents, they had very simple life. A simple, big, fat, black and white television, cane sofas they had. Okay, my mother used to make curtains out of her old, worn out sarees, and that is how they had a happy life. If you want to enjoy, you make snacks at home, pakoras at home, and have happy time with your family. That is how our family used to be just one generation back. Today, what we need smart, super smart television, bigger and bigger and bigger size of the television. We need different accessories in our house. We need those Apple products in to carry. Okay, our lifestyle is rising day by day. Okay, why? Because of our society. Okay, the way we look at our society, they have people have, I don't have, so I have to rush. And what we are doing in that way, we are creating the demand. Okay, we are asking for more and more. Okay, so our life becomes a little difficult, whereas the production gets very smooth, and the people at the business and corporate end, they gain a lot due to the rising demands of ours. Okay, so our demands are rising, and you know, as a result, we are rushing and running and panting for work to earn more and more so that we can have more and more of that lifestyle. Okay, so that is, you can see that that is created. Okay, so this world around us, it appears to have a rock like solidity. Okay, that is resisting all our efforts to influence it. We want to influence our society, which is why we want more and more of everything in order to show off. But our society is rock solid, it doesn't bother what you do. But what you do, you're foolish enough to go mad in order to show your influence on it. So secondly, and most importantly, next point, activity, our work in this kind of world, in any world that matters. Okay, production. Okay, it is a long and definite process of organized activity. Okay, production is a very long and definite process of organized activity in whichever society you live in. So Marx actually, coming to Marx actually considered this production as the most crucial aspect of human existence. Please remember this. You're going to write this in your answer. Marx considered production, okay, not distribution, production. He found production to be the most crucial aspect of human existence. Please remember this. So, according to him, what he says, men can be distinguished from animals by consciousness, by religion, or anything else you like. They themselves begin to distinguish themselves from animals as soon as they begin to produce their means of subsistence a step which is conditioned by the physical organization. So he says that how men and human beings are different, apart from consciousness, apart from religion, it is how and what they produce. Animals cannot produce for themselves, whereas human beings can do. Okay, so this gives a clear definition of man in terms of animal from the point of view of Karl Marx. Okay, so he says that by producing, human beings, they're, they are indirectly producing their actual material life. Okay, you're producing something, then actually you are producing your material life. You are producing something, you're selling it. In exchange, you're getting money, and then you're increasing your material life. Okay, so as individuals express their life through their lifestyles. Okay, I think you understood what I am trying to say. So by producing their own means of by own means, they are producing their own material life. Okay, so individuals express their life through their through what they produce. Okay, so production, both with what they produce and how they produce, is also important. What they are producing and how they are, means what kind of investment are they making for the production of certain goods, that is also important. According to Marx, so the nature of individuals, it depends on the material conditions determining their production. Okay, so you have to notice that Marx actually gives a very factual, he gives a very explanatory comment on society. Okay, now society is connected with the economy of that society. So what he asserts here, what he is actually trying to say in very nutshell, actually he is trying to say that production is not outside human beings. Okay, production according to Marx is never outside human beings, it is between, and it is within them. Production is within them. Okay, so producing their means of living, human beings, they produce themselves. Okay, through producing my goods, actually I am producing my own self. Okay, I am creating my own self with whatever I have. Okay, so this is extremely in terms of entrepreneurship or business. Okay, uh, and where Marx actually is very economical from his point of view. From an economist point of view, he is defining society. Okay, so see how society and economy are deeply intertwined. You cannot detach economy from certain society. Okay, and Marx says that our nature is independent, and our, nature does not get influenced from any material conditions. So Marx actually word is strong here. Okay, so he actually means dependence. He says that we are quite independent. Okay, and we do not depend only from material conditions. We are not confined to material conditions only. We are quite independent by our own selves. Okay, and whatever we choose, whatever we feel like we can produce good, that only we go for our production. Okay, so I think this kind of theory is very much practical for the present also, where we are talking a lot of skill based works. Okay, so he's, I think, in a different way, through different expressions, Marx has actually pointed out about skill based works. He says that our production is in our hands. Whatever we feel we are good at, we produce that. Okay, all right. So we are never dependent upon any kind of material conditions. We are dependent only by ourselves. Okay. So if you see a highly organized activity, okay, which is production and distribution. So for any layman, okay, this is quite simple. Because when we talk about production and distribution, we usually think that it is something given at any moment or not worth much attention. So for a clever person, this production and distribution is worthy of a lot of attention, because that only comprises of our society, that actually makes us what we are. Okay, when you talk about organized activity, then you have to be very deeply thoughtful what kind of production you can make in order to create demand of your product, so that your worth and attention will grow. So the market segment that you see today is very intricate mechanism. Our market today is very, mechanism is there and very intricate. Okay, it doesn't look so easy. जूता चाहिए जूता ले ली हो गया ना, that if you study market of those shoes, it is very intricate. Okay, it is a kind of mechanism which needs a lot of thoughts. Okay, from economical perspective. So it also reflects the nature of people engaged in the production of raw materials. It is also influenced by the people who are involved in the industrial goods, how industrial production is done. So it is a very complex mechanism. Okay. So you just see whatever is produced, but what comprises of that material is very complicated. Okay. So, market is just not the agency of distribution. It is just not an arena of selling and buying of goods. It is a more complex system. Okay. And everything you can see, this different system, it is very capitalistic that we are operating. It is very much material, very much capitalistic that we are seeing in our market. Okay. Now, students, I'll take your leave for now because I've already done. We'll be discussing feminism and other theories from tomorrow. So, goodbye for today. We'll continue tomorrow, same time.
Good evening, everyone. Now we will have the MEG 8 class. So those who have MEG 8 can remain, others can leave. Habiba Iqbal, you have MEG 8. Good evening, Ruchi. Good evening, Suman. Ruchi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir.
Okay. Good evening. You were not there for the last two classes?
Yes, sir. Sir, I am busy.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
Okay, so today we will do a house of Mr. Biswas. Mm, So initially, I'll tell you about the characters, and then we'll talk about the plot and the themes. Okay, yeah. So just give me a minute. Mm. So you find the first character that you see that is okay. Before I talk about the characters, just a minute. So let me just tell you, introduce you to the author of this novel, A House for Mr. Biswas, written by V.S. Naipaul. So you find V.S. Naipaul was born in rural Trinidad, and he was the grandson of indentured servants from South Asia who came to work on Trinidad sugarcane plantations. So you find his father was the journalist Seeper Sat Naipaul, on whom the character of Mr. Biswas is based. And you find his mother came, from the prominent, capital Dio family, and the model of for the Tulsi family in a house of Mr. Biswas. He moved from the countryside to port of Spain, at the age of 6. Attended the Trinidad's best regarded secondary school, and then won a scholarship to Oxford, where he felt out of place and suffered a described nervous breakdown. Nevertheless, we find after graduating in 1953, the same year of his father's death, Naipaul lived the rest of his life in England. He married his Oxford classmate, Patricia Hale, in 1955, and later you find that while living in London and writing his first novel, The Mystic Messiah,